wanted to talk a little bit about drafting bill analyses in the California Legislature, which is obviously an important part of the California legislative process. That is the preparation of analyses for legislators when they're considering legislative measures, including bills, resolutions, and proposed constitutional amendments. All of the committees, both policy and fiscal, prepare analyses of legislative measures. And then once bills hit the floors of the Senate and Assembly, floor analyses are prepared. When reviewing bill analyses, you can quickly note that there are different approaches taken, both among the policy committees of the two houses of the legislature and also the fiscal committees of the two houses. The fiscal committee analyses are generally brief, usually a page or two, but sometimes 2 to 4 pages, depending upon the details of the bill or the legislative measure, because their focus is on the estimated fiscal impact of the bill rather than the policy of those measures. On the other hand, policy committee analyses can run a small number of pages, 5 to 10, and sometimes 20 or 30 pages in length. For example, the judiciary committees of the two houses often write in-depth analyses of some detailed legal issues that are presented in civil code or code of civil procedure changes, for example. Now, while the format may be different amongst the committees, as well as the two houses of the legislature, they generally contain a few component parts. Obviously, they list the number, the author, the subject matter, a brief summary of what the bill proposes to do. They usually have a detailed explanation of the problem that is being addressed. They'll discuss existing law as well as the proposed law changes in the particular bill. Usually they include an author's statement about the need for their bill, a summary of support arguments, a summary of the opposition arguments. Perhaps they'll list some prior legislation and the outcome that's on the same or similar topic, list any pending legislation in the current session and its status. And then most committees, except the fiscal committees, generally list the supporters and opponents from whom the committee has received letters of support and opposition. The only real shortfalls of these committee bill analyses that I see is that they're focused on the bill that's in front of them, and don't, for example, generally consider different options. That's not a criticism of the committees or certainly not the committee consultants, just the reality of having to analyze so many measures for each hearing that there's really little opportunity to look into what are potential other options to solve the stated public policy concern that's being addressed by the current bill. There's discussion sometimes about the problem and the specific solution that's contained in that bill, but are there other options, even better options to address the issue? The other thing is that when it comes to legislative history and intent research, the analyses do a good job of explaining existing law and how the particular bill proposes to change the law, and certainly covers the arguments being made for and against the bill that's under consideration. But there's very little information at the hearings or in the analyses as to, for example, why certain words or phrases are chosen or not chosen, and what had been considered, what were options that were discussed that weren't used, for example, or could be used in the particular bill sections. And so for purpose of determining later on, well after the bill's been enacted, either by the courts or an administrative agency or in litigation, there's limited information as to why specific words or phrases were or were not included in the analyses. But they nonetheless continue to serve the most important purpose of educating the public and, of course, the decision makers, i.e., legislators, in deciding whether to vote for or against bills that are before them for consideration. In addition to the policy and fiscal committee consultants, the Senate Republican caucus and Assembly Republican caucus have consultants as well that prepare an analyses for the Republican members of the policy and fiscal committees as well.